Okay. Good evening, everyone. On this fine Sunday, Sunday evening, thanks for joining with us. This webinar organized by Isipathana College Junior All Boys Union as a continuation of the continued webinar series we had. This is the 5th episode of the series. We, as the Isipathana College Junior All Boys Union, we always try to share the knowledge, share experience, and then connect with more with the school community as well as the young professionals audience. So you've joined with the next episode there where we would like to discuss with you the future-proofing your career in the age of disruption, which will be the topic today. And with all good intentions at hand, we'll like to get things going. So in today's webinar, we have with us as our keynote speaker today, Shaad Hamid, who is the senior, he's the regional head of growth operations as well as the general manager who's taking care of operations in the South Asia region and APAC in overall. He's a senior business leader with over a decade worth of experience in digital marketing in Europe, Middle East, North America region, and APAC regions. He has helped some of the world's most iconic brands to acquire, retain, and increase customer value by employing a fusion of brand, digital media, data, and technology user experience. So joining us with today, GrowthOps Regional Head Shaad, I would like you to take the floor and then continue with this session. And floor is yours.
Thanks, Prabuddha. Let me just try and share my screen.
Shaad, if you let me one point that I along with the lecturer when the presentation going on, if you have any questions, you can actually post on the chat box, and we at the end after the Q&A session, we would like to discuss those questions. So we cordially invite you all, if you have any questions, to put on the chat box as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Prabuddha. Really excited to be here today and share a few of my thoughts about developing a career and obviously future-proofing your career in the next 10 years. Thank you so much for the intro as well. As you mentioned, Prabuddha, I've been in marketing and technology for quite some time across 3 different regions, and I've worked with a multitude of brands, from some of the most iconic brands to some of the most innovative businesses. So I'm really excited about the innovation that's going to happen in the next 10 years and 20 years. And the entire sort of discussion that I would like to have today is to try and look at some macro trends and try and extrapolate what we feel, or what I feel, is going to be the needs of the future. So let me start by kind of saying that this presentation that I'm about to share with all of you is basically what I would tell my children. I have 2 young children. One is almost 4. The other one is almost 2. I have older one's a daughter, the next one's a boy. And looking at all the sort of disruptions that's happening, the innovation that's happening, what this means for my kids and for you, and for your children in the future as well, is going to be phenomenal. So this is the talk that I will probably be having with them, obviously not with the deck and so on, but the ideas essentially are all pieced together. So it's coming from a position of love as well. So what does the future look like? But before that, I wanted to look at what did the past kind of look like. So a really brief history of what is expected of employees and how employees have sort of responded in that period. So looking back, way back, like say 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, companies are basically kings, right? You join at the bottom, you work your way up the ladder over decades. My father worked for the same company for 35 years. Worked for a company called Ceylon Oxygen in Mattakulia. And he started his career there, and until the day that he retired, was working in the same company. So, but I suppose that was normal back in the day, because starting a business is not cheap. You had to have a lot of capital. Access to connections weren't as much as there were today. So generally, the markets were quite stable. Job security was quite high. So loyalty was essentially, rewarded. Then came an era of disruption after the, tech boom and bust. The era of disruption led by a handful of digital natives, they ended up dominating the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is basically a collection of 500 of the top US companies. And if you look at the 500, you'll see that the top 5 or the top 10 are pretty much all digital based, right? And so these digital based companies don't really care about tradition. They don't care about loyalty. What's really valued here is what skills can you bring to the table. And as you could argue, sort of a meritocracy is the kind of culture that is harnessed in those kind of companies. Now, I'm talking about 2010 onwards. You can see every single company is ubiquitous with tech. What does that mean? It means that every single industry, whether it's finance, whether it's the travel industry, whether it's health, whether it's education, every single industry is touched by technology today and digital. And so it's not just technology companies are purely technology based, but a lot of businesses are now becoming product-led businesses. So for example, you'd have apps trying to teach people, education, which used to be back in the day, you had to have a big university, spend a lot of money on, the campus, the dorms. There's a lot of capital expenditure there. Now you literally have YouTube, or you go onto Coursera or one of these platforms, and you can essentially learn, right? Similarly, back in the day, you would need to call 622 622 for a cab. I can't remember what the numbers were, and then a cab would show up. And it used to be run by a company which owned the fleet of taxis. But today, companies don't really even own any of the cars, right? Or the tuk-tuks. All that the platforms now are doing is being the middleman, where buyers and sellers essentially come together. So it's very product-led today, right? Now, the future, I would argue, is going to be focused on value creation. So employees are now tasked with growth. It's not enough that you're doing a job, but it's important how you can align your job to the company's overall strategy. So you have strategy execution responsibilities if you aren't responsible for the strategy, and you are also responsible for the technology needs of the company. So in short, it's no longer about being a good employee, but it's about driving revenue. And today it's all about what the market wants, and it's a very market-led economy that we are living in, right? So that's the setting. This might feel a little bit obscure, but why are you showing me this graph of the US money supply? So this is a graph of the M1. The M1 money supply is defined as all of the money in circulation, including savings accounts, money in savings accounts. It doesn't include things like money in stocks or shares, money in retirement accounts, money in real estate. It doesn't include that. This literally just includes money in circulation, liquid cash in the United States, right? Notice how there's been a gradual growth up until 2010. From 2010, there was $2 trillion in supply. In 2020, it doubled to 4 trillion, right? 4 trillion. From March 2020 till May 2020, the money in circulation went from 4 trillion up to over $16 trillion. And today, we're near almost 20 trillion US dollars in circulation. Why is this important? This is important because of two things, right? One is that if you look at the stocks, for example, right? You look at companies like Google, Apple, Tesla, you can see that they had steady growth. Once 2020 arrived and the pandemic hit, boom, their valuation skyrocketed. Same with Apple, same with Tesla, right? And Bitcoin, this is an interesting one, right? It was literally worth less than $1 in 2009. Today, I just checked, it's over 60,000 US dollars. That's incredible, right? Now, the reason why all these asset inflation has happened is because there's a lot of cash circulating around. Now, this is problematic for Sri Lanka because we also have currency devaluation. I don't need to go into a lot of detail here because you already know that you're experiencing, the fact that the rupee, the Sri Lankan rupee, is getting devalued against the US dollar. I'm here to give you some more bad news. The US dollar is getting devalued itself. This amount of money printing will lead to the US dollar being devalued in the years and decades to come, okay? This is going to have a huge impact in your lives, my children's, my grandchildren's lives. And if I can ask you something to do, if you can take a screenshot of this graph and frame it in your room, I think I would advise you to do that because this is going to have repercussions for years to come, right? And obviously, from a currency devaluation perspective, you're probably experiencing it today. We know how expensive, a gas cylinder is, and all of this. It's not because of the government's fault, right? It's literally because, as in not the government in power now, but it's literally over the years. Now, this is the price of one rupee against, each of the currencies against the rupee, okay? And you can see that the US dollar was $4.76. One US dollar was 4 rupees and 76 cents in 1968. Today, it's 202 rupees. In the black market, it's probably even higher, right? That means we've devalued 42 times less. Notice the Malaysian dollar, right? Back in the day, it was a Malaysian dollar. This was in Malaysia and Singapore were one country. Then they kind of split. So Singapore stuck to the dollar. Malaysia changed it to ringgit. The Malaysian ringgit is still one US dollar is 4 Malaysian ringgit. One US dollar against the Singapore dollar is $1.35, which means that of these countries, Sri Lanka actually has one of the worst currency devaluation, okay? So this has huge impact on your futures. It means that if you're going to buy a house, it's going to be really, really expensive. If you're going to buy a car, if your expenses in the future are going to be ridiculously expensive, right? So it's incredibly important that you do think about getting into a career that gives you monetary value. How can we make sure that we take advantage of all these, all these innovations, plus the current situation? How do we stay ahead of the curve without having to get, swept away by what's going to happen? Notice how if anyone had owned shares of Google, Apple, Tesla, Bitcoin, you're probably doing really well today, right? So that's an indication of two things. One is that the people with capital will do well. People with capital who invest in assets, whether it's shares, whether it's property, whether it's crypto, in the long run, you will do well. The second people are the ones who are creating value. The ones who create value, the ones who build things, the ones who design things, the ones who can do things that not a lot of people can do, those people will be able to make a decent income, an income higher than what inflation is going to affect. And this is why today, what I want to do is to just close our eyes, dream a little, okay, and make some dubious speculation about what the future is going to look like. And these are all based on some of what I think is going to cause the biggest disruptions. So looking back at history, we've had some major innovations, right? So if you're looking at, I wouldn't go into the 18th century, 19th century, but these technologies, the steam engine, the railway network, the ICE or internal combustion engine technology was groundbreaking at the time, right? But in the early 19th century, three things came together which basically created the Industrial Revolution. One was the telephone, automobile, and electricity. This caused a huge explosion in innovation. It caused a huge explosion in productivity, right? So after this, it took a long time until something really innovative came about, right? Things like computers. And then, closer to the 21st century, we had the internet. But I contend my thoughts that we are at the precipice of 5 major technologies that are coming together, similar to the Industrial Revolution back in the early 20th century. I contend 5 new disruptive innovations and technologies that will cause huge disruptions across every single category and sector, right? And these are energy storage, artificial intelligence, robotics, genome sequencing, and blockchain technology. All of these things actually were there for more than 10 years, but I feel that now costs have come down to such an extent that all of these are ready for prime time. They're ready for the markets. And so in the next 10 to 20 years, these technologies will come together to fuel some of the craziest innovation that you've never seen. So as I mentioned, the 5 forces, inherently what this means is you're talking about battery technology, because you're looking at, things like electrification of mobility, like electric cars and so on and so forth. Artificial intelligence, that's going to have a huge impact on every single industry. DNA sequencing even for healing and creating vaccines. The mRNA technology that Pfizer and Moderna are using was because of the fact that we were ready at this stage with DNA sequencing technology, right? Robotics, we've always, like in the 60s and the 70s, with Star Wars and Star Trek, we've always had, an idea that there's going to be robots running the show, but it really never materialized. But now costs again are coming down. Artificial intelligence is now almost ready. So these things can essentially, are ready for prime time, I feel. And blockchain technology, especially disrupting the fintech space, and pretty much all the other spaces as well, which we will talk about in a bit. So before I continue, actually, I just wanted to say that I'm not here to try and tell you what job you should be doing, right? What I'm trying to do is inspire you to think about where the world is going. what we should potentially do to prepare for this, ever-changing world. What will likely happen is that the jobs that you might be doing in the future will probably don't even exist today. When I was doing my A-levels in 2005 with Prabuddha, the job that I got into straight after uni as a search engine optimization expert or specialist or whatever you call it, I didn't even know that there was such a job that existed when I was in school, right? And for 8 years, I essentially worked in a field that didn't exist 10, 15 years ago, right? Similarly, you will be doing jobs that actually don't exist today, right? So the idea is, okay, if these are the things that are going to disrupt the future, what can come out of these things, right? So deep learning is a part of AI, but the cool thing about deep learning is it's not just learning from humans or just data sets. It will learn, understand patterns, and also be able to create. For example, it should be able to, in an ideal scenario, should be able to develop a website for you. So you can, instead of going on to a website builder, you can literally talk to this software and say, I want the global navigation at the top to be this way. I want the homepage to look like this. I want, the cover image to be this, with this specs. And the software will be able to listen to what you're saying and create it for you, to that level of sort of sophistication. This kind of thing is right now happening, but it's happening at, I wouldn't even say beta, but at alpha stage right now. There are projects that are trying to build this kind of software. The only way it's possible to do is through deep learning. So getting into AI, thinking about how deep learning can help, and also the things that are being done, for example, on Google, on how they're trying to understand who the user is and what types of content that they'll be interested in. They are using AI technology in order to be able to recommend some of the best content for you. But beyond that, to be able to talk to you as a robot and a Google Home device, or even if you are driving a Tesla, for example, being able to understand that there's a deer in front of you, or there's a particular sign that says stop. The car should be able to make that decision by itself. The only way it can do that is through deep learning, through seeing things and being able to understand what things are. Right? So there's a huge explosion just about to happen. So it's been estimated that deep learning will add $30 trillion to the global equity market capitalization in the next 15 to 20 years. So if you want to get into an area that's going to be highly valued, definitely get into AI, deep learning, even machine learning at the start is fine. So this is a very exciting space. Another really cool thing, right, is when you have all these deep learning, AI type technologies being implemented, that means there's a lot of data that's required, right? Imagine if you're a bank. As a bank, you have information about the user, the user's information, whether it's their address, their name, their telephone numbers, their account details. If they went and bought a particular product, where did they buy it? When did they buy it? What kinds of products did they buy? If they call the call center, when did they call? Whom did they call? What was it regarding? If they came to a branch, when did this person come to the branch? What did this person do? All this data, right? Imagine thousands and hundreds of thousands of people are doing this. And now people are doing mobile banking, right? So all of this data needs to be housed and stored. It used to be on a mainframe back in the day, but today, a lot of the people are moving into the cloud. And with things like deep learning, the computation power required, right, to do these kind of really sophisticated stuff, you need to have crazy data centers, right? So if you want to get into that area, I would say definitely get in cloud computing. Right now, it's very nascent. AWS, GCP or Google Cloud platform, Azure, these are companies that are still trying to win market share. AWS or Amazon Web Services is the leader right now, but the market is still very nascent. The market in the future will need large data centers, right? So these companies are trying to, try and get ahead. But there will be huge amount of cloud computing experts that will be required in the future, right? This is a fun one. This is virtual worlds, right? And this is where, if you're sitting there thinking, hey, I'm not a developer, I'm not a tech person, how is this, what if I'm not a tech person? How am I? I'm more of a creative person. How am I going to take advantage of this space, right? Virtual worlds are really interesting right now because it includes, video games, augmented reality, virtual reality. What this means is that you can essentially, if you're a creative director or creative person, you can design an entire world. You can create characters in a game. You can create, if you're a fashion designer, you can design their armory, you can design their clothes. You can, if you're a storyteller or a copywriter, you can literally create the story. If you're a musician, you can create the music to it, the soundtrack to it. If you're a developer, you can then start taking all of this and start developing all of this stuff, right? If you're an animator, you can start creating all of this stuff in 3D. So it's bringing together all these different people from different areas to create this thing, right? And you can take it even a step further. You're talking about virtual reality. You're talking about Facebook trying to bring in the metaverse, where in the future, instead of us talking through, Zoom on video calls, we can, wear our headsets and our Oculus Rifts, and we can literally, our virtual selves can meet, in the future, which I expect that to be kind of crazy. But another thing I wanted to also share here is that one cool thing is, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Sanat Jayasuri, Sanat, he was a mentor for an esports team recently, right? A lot of people, Sanat has always been an innovator. He innovated how batsmen should, bat in the first 15 overs. Even at the age of 40, right, when they introduced T20 cricket, he was still able to compete at a, at a very high level. Even at the age of like 40, 41, 42, he was still playing. He was very fit. You can see that, and he still looks really fit, right? You can imagine even if he was given an opportunity to play today, I'd reckon he'll still, be quite good. He was mentoring an esports team, which to me blew my mind because he's one person who could be like, what's esports? Is this not real sports? Like, what are you talking about, right? But he didn't do that. He's actually mentoring an esports team and having respect for the fact that, esports is also equally competitive and requires skill, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is not, don't start, buying video games and playing video games every day. Your parents are probably going to curse me. But what I'm saying here is, like I said, right, this is a capitalist market we're living in, right? So, either you invest in gaming companies or augmented reality, or be a creator. Create these worlds, be part of the creation, be a developer, be a creative director, be a musician, be a copywriter, writing the stories of each of these different characters, their backstories. Can you imagine how cool this world is? You're bringing in cinematic experiences, music, and all of that kind of stuff into something that's so immersive. Right now, these worlds currently bring in about $180 billion today. And they're estimating by 2025 that this industry will be worth double that, more than double, to 390 billion. You include things like blockchain technology and all that kind of fun stuff. This place is going to be pretty amazing. Right? Digital wallets, I know it sounds pretty boring, but there is a $4.6 trillion opportunity. We're talking about the largest proportion of people in the world are unbanked, right? So if you think about people outside of Colombo, outside of Kandy, outside of Gaul, most people in villages don't even have a bank account, right? And if you take countries like India, Pakistan, Indonesia, the vast majority, 70, 80% are unbanked. They don't have a bank account. And if you don't have a bank account, you can't, apply for a loan. Because if you want to buy a house, you need to be able to have access to capital. If you want to start a business, you need to have access to capital. banks don't give money unless you actually have a relationship with the bank, right? So these digital wallets are going to be huge. Right now, there's lots of that happening all over the world, but there's still lots of gaps in there. None of them are perfect, right? It's still very nascent, very, very early days. So, and also the finance process is a very inefficient process, and anybody who is trying to get paid from abroad or trying to make a sale, the banking system is pretty flawed and it's ripe for disruption. Digital wallets, I believe, will be that disruptor. So fintech, lots of money to be made. Definitely watch this space. Bitcoin is a crazy one, but the reason why I put Bitcoin here is because things like virtual worlds, right? This is where potentially they will monetize the experiences. For example, if you have a character that you're playing with and you think that this character needs, weapons, or it needs fancy armory, you can buy those with tokens or with currency from the game itself, or you can connect it to the crypto world and buy and sell things using cryptocurrency, right? That can happen. Also, when musicians, they start minting NFTs and stuff like that, that's already happening. But what I'm saying is that this can again have huge value in the creative fields as well, right? So I'm not talking about Bitcoin per se, but I'm talking about the crypto space, the decentralized finance space, that will essentially make banks more and more redundant, right? Regular people, like we saw in El Salvador, they made Bitcoin legal, currency. So in the future, we'll start seeing more and more adoption and more countries adopting Bitcoin into their balance sheet and cryptocurrencies as well. Ethiopia is working with the Cardano Foundation to include pretty much every single student into the blockchain. So there's some really exciting stuff happening there as well. Right? Electric vehicles. This is I'm a massive Tesla bull, and I think that by 2030, pretty much most cars sold are going to be pure electric cars. China right now have a massive target. By 2027, they want to ensure that 1 out of 2 cars sold is going to be an electric car. China wants to be the global leader in the electric mobility space. They own the entire value chain, from manufacturing to even owning the lithium-ion mines in South America. So because you need a lithium-ion for the battery technology, they literally own the mines in Africa and in South America. So they own the entire value chain. Tesla, on the other hand, is looking at some very sophisticated, they're trying to be market leaders in that space, but China will continue to innovate. And the cool thing, like I said, is all this technology is converging, right? Imagine these cars, they want to ensure that they can drive itself. That's the big vision, for cars to be able to drive by itself. For the cars to be able to drive by itself, the software needs to be developed. And that software needs to be able to make, in a split second, when a car is traveling at 100, 150 kilometers an hour, it needs to be able to make a split decision whether to turn left or turn right. And to be able to do that, you need technologies like 5G. You need technologies and also computational powers. And you'll need the data centers. You'll need the engineers, the software developers, the AI specialists, all of these people coming together, right, in order to be able to build this car. Because it's not just a car, right? It's battery technology, it's software, it's AI, it's so much more, right? So this is going to be incredibly exciting space, where in the future, our children will not even need a license to drive, because the car will drive itself. And imagine, right, I talked about platforms like Grab, Uber, Pick Me even. These guys don't own the assets, right? So they're dependent on the drivers having their own cars. Now imagine Tesla or NIO or BYD or whatever, electric car company, if these guys had autonomous cars that they can literally, send a car to your house, pick you up, drop you wherever you want to go. There's no driver involved. They would have the data and they would own that data. They would know where you're going, when did you go, where you went. It will have that data so much so that its costs will be low, because they would know with their software when do they need to make an oil change, make a service, whether the car is going to break down. They have all of that data. So even to insure itself, they can actually do it at a very, very cheap rate. So they can get into insurance as well, because car insurance is one of the biggest costs for large sort of taxi services as well. So again, huge amount of opportunities here. Again, thinking even bigger, right? You can see all these billionaires, Elon Musk and Bezos, trying to go to space or trying to make space accessible for everyone, right? What this means is, again, don't try to get on a rocket ship just yet, but this means that things like 3D printing, robotics, engineering, even Internet of Things, these are going to be quite massive, right? So if you want to get into this space is just going to be huge. Pardon the pun. I guess this is the last one, I hope, is cell and gene therapy generation 2. And this, although at a very early stage, we have seen its applications. For example, when, like I said before, the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines were created, they were able to do it and do it so fast, because normally vaccines require like years and years to be approved, whereas these ones literally took less than a year. And the reason is because you can literally create the code and tell the body, like, hey, this is what the COVID virus looks like. And if it enters the body, here's what you need to do. It's basically teaching our body how to react. Because prior to this, the old-fashioned way, the analog way of creating vaccines is you make the virus half strength, and you essentially put the virus into your body, and then your body fights it, right, and kills it, and then it recognizes it. The problem is, if there's a variant, it's a bit like somebody memorizing what 2 + 2 = 4, but doesn't really understand the logic of addition and subtraction. So all they'll know is that 2 + 2 = 4. If you ask them 3 + 2 = how much, they'll be like, I don't know, because I only know 2 + 2 = 4. Similarly, the body will only know this specific strand, whereas with mRNA technology, at least it'll be able to identify, to a certain extent, different variants as well. And that's what you're seeing in the data as well, that the mRNA vaccines are better at handling variants than those non-mRNA ones. Now, moving into the future, we will start seeing gene and cell therapy helping to create or to eradicate diseases, things like tumors. There's what's it called? I think it's called hypothalassemia. I don't know whether the situation has gotten improved, but in Kurunagala, thalassemia is a inherent genetic disease. So they found through genetic therapy or gene therapy that they have managed to cure hypothalassemia, especially in children, right? And there's so many other gene or DNA-related diseases, genetic diseases that are being cured. So again, very, very early stages today, but in the next 5, 10, 15 years, this space is going to be incredible. People in the marketing industry will probably be able to, will be able to understand. Back in the day, right? If I want to do an ad, I will put the ad on a billboard on, say, high-level road, right? Where the 138 bus would pass. But I don't know how many people who saw the ad, whether that ad led to a sale. We never knew that, right? We just had an ad on the billboard, we had an ad in the newspaper, or in a magazine, or in the yellow pages. But today, because of digital, we are able to know how much am I spending. I'm spending X amount of money in Facebook. I'm getting this amount of leads from that, this amount of sales from my Google advertising, my Facebook advertising. I have actual data. The medical industry right now is like the advertising industry in the 70s and the 80s, right? Because today, how doctors diagnose illnesses is by deduction, meaning that they will say, what's your symptoms? And then the patient will tell them, this is my symptoms. Based on the symptoms, they will say, okay, you have this, you have this, you have this, then you're more likely to have this disease or this illness. So based on this, how old are you? What's your weight? Based on that, here's my medication that I'm going to give you. What gene therapy and DNA sequencing will help you is you can take your DNA report to the doctor, and the doctor will be able to see directly from your genes whether you're more susceptible for catching a specific disease. And based off of your genetic code, how much of a particular medicine should you get? Because today, everyone is told you need to have two tablets of paracetamol, right? That's just a standard. But if you actually had data about the person, you can say, actually, you don't need 2 tablets. All you need is a quarter of a tablet. Or your genetic build means that you need to take at least 4 tablets of paracetamol. For example, I'm just giving a silly example here, right? But there will be actual data that the doctors can really diagnose problems and diagnose them very fast. So this is a very, very exciting space. If you're thinking of getting into medical college or whatever, think of getting into this space. Instead of becoming a doctor, you can actually get into this very, very exciting space where a lot of explosive innovation and growth is going to happen, right? So I guess that's a lot that I've shared. I hope I didn't bore you. But what I want to sort of end with is make sure that you dream big, right? And like I said, it's going to be very fast paced. It's going to be crazy. So buckle up for the ride, and make sure that whatever you do fits with your own purpose, and you need to understand what is that purpose. And it's okay at a very young age to not know what your purpose is. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life as when I graduated from uni. But I tried, I did different things, and then I was like, yeah, I think I like this better. So try and figure out what's your purpose. The idea is once you have these skills, try and exploit those gaps, exploit opportunities. And it's in those gaps where there is real innovation, real growth, and real value that comes, right? So very quickly, let me just summarize what we just discussed. The first is, Sri Lanka is in need of visionary youth who can help break away from years of traditional thinking. So what I want you to think of is stop thinking about a job in the normal way that you think. Also be aware of what's actually happening. All the stuff that you see of politicians saying certain things and the news that you read, it's all just noise. Know that last year, in March to May, the United States printed and is still printing over $16 trillion worth of money into the market. Countries like ours with weak balance sheets are going to get hammered. That is a fact, right? What do we need to do to make sure that we don't get wrecked and that we ensure that we are staying ahead of the curve? That's the key, right? So plan ahead based on macro trends and what will be valuable for the future. So, don't just do things just for the sake of it. Have a plan. If you are into poetry, you're into art, you're into designing, whatever it is, use the technologies that are there. And based off of that, you can create whatever, you're good at. The most important thing that I can share with you is make sure that at the very least, you might have noticed everything that I shared, almost everything is very technical, right? So you'll need to have some basic technical literacy. So in the future, it's going to be, almost hygiene for every single student to know at least Python or at least JavaScript. If you can learn at least these 2, coding languages, at least you'll probably be ahead of others. So if you can, I would highly encourage you to learn at least Python, or if you also can, JavaScript as well. They are both object-oriented coding languages. So if you learn one, learning the other one becomes relatively easy. Now, when everything goes digital, right? One thing that's really going to be also important is soft skills. So don't forget about that, because when everything becomes impersonal, learning how to create an argument and argue your point of view in a very coherent way without getting angry, without getting emotional, being able to present your ideas in a compelling way, that's important. How do you present? How do you share ideas? How do you work collaboratively with teams? Because no one works alone anymore. You work in teams, and today you're working in teams virtually. My team, I have 4 teams actually. One in Singapore, one in KL, one in Manila. Sometimes we work with our Australian office as well. And all of us essentially are one team, but we are working together through digital technologies. So how do you work collaboratively across different countries? So you will need to have soft skills that you need to ensure, because you will need to be able to work together in teams, because it's in teams and different people coming with different skills coming together. That's where magic really happens, right? Then I would also recommend, as soon as possible, if you can get international experience or exposure, that'll open up your vision and your peripheral vision, because it will really expand what you feel is capable, and you can essentially use what you're seeing outside, and you can circumvent some of the challenges that you might feel, having to develop certain stuff in Sri Lanka. Today, anyone with a computer and internet connection has access to a global market. So try and get international experience as much as possible. And lastly, Kaizen, which is continuous improvement, continuous learning. Because even for me, right, I can't stop with what I have learned today. I need to be able to unlearn what I've learned so far if I am to compete in the next 10 to 15 years, right? And that's exactly what I'll be telling my kids as well. You'll need to consistently be able to reinvent yourself and consistently disrupt yourself. The best companies are the companies that disrupt itself. If you think about companies like Apple, for example, they disrupt their own business. Rather than waiting for another business to disrupt them, they disrupt their own business. In the same way, see if you can reinvent yourself, constantly disrupt yourself, challenge yourself, push yourself to learn new things, to change your ways into looking at newer things and being open-minded. And I think that's all of it. And I hope that this gave you some sort of perspective. And I hope that you found value in this session. So with that, I will pass the mic back to Prabuddha.
Thank you very much, Shaad. I think it's wonderful wonderful, breathtaking, exciting, and then somewhat futuristic in my mind. And I'm glad that someone like you, Shaad, came on board with us on this wonderful presentation. It is I need few seconds to take that all in. As much as it is exciting to see this much of possibilities. We are living in a space and in a time where magic can happen, and it is possible. As like 10 years, 20 years ago, when we were kids, like some of the things that we see in movies, they're like science fiction. Now we see those things are happening. It's I think it actually push us into expand our horizons and then step into a world where anything is possible. Like I remember, like we were like when we were kids, and like people think about oh, we go to another planet. And then I think a couple of months ago, I actually watched Elon Musk was asked this question. And he said, like, yeah, it's possible. It can be done. It's like, how would you do it? We go to Mars. And then he asked, like, you own the short version to make it happen or the long version? The guy says, no, all right, give me the short version. Oh, it's easy. You got to warm it up. And then, and like, how do you do it? Or you get all your nuclear resources and drop it on the poles, and then there you go. You can have like, that's how much we have to expand our imagination. And then he's talking about hyperloops, and I mean, we are all somewhat Tesla fans in any way. So it is amazing the amount of possibilities we have. So thank you for opening that much of possible, and then which in turn actually tells us. You mentioned a good valid point that I think coming from a cultural perspective in Sri Lanka, I think which is actually improving for the better, that these noises around, like how much actually we are losing just because we are listening to this noise. There's like how much this is gonna cater for what we can do and what the potential is very minute. So forget this noise and go for the real sound that can make a difference. So I think that's somewhat inspiring as well. So thank you very much. That is wonderful, as is best. I think it is. Thank you very much, Shaad. So I think with this, we would like to take this the next session where we like to take some Q&As session, and then we had some other questions at hand as well to discuss. And I think it's more of a sharing knowledge, sharing experience version of it. So with that in mind, I would like to also introduce Chaminda Sooriyapperuma. He's actually the associate software architect of a world-renowned brand software development company, Tiqri. He's joining with us. So thank you very much for joining us, Chaminda. Yeah. And so with this, I would like to get the first question. I'll go to Chaminda. So all these possibilities, are we too small to absorb this? Are we somewhat, should we take a step back and say, oh, it is just too big, or shall we just, oh, all this chaos is too much for us? Or let's break the walls, and how are we going to go about it? And what's the approach as you would see it?
I was on mute. I don't think that we should think that we are small or we are lacking anything. I think we have all the necessary things if you want to achieve things. That the most important thing is that whether we need or whether we have that need to achieve anything, or we want to go ahead with the what we had. I mean, even when you're out, when you're going out from the school nowadays, I mean, we were thinking, okay, without the university, we'll be in trouble, or without selecting to a state university, we'll be in trouble. So I think all of these are nowadays that there are thousands of possibilities if you look forward, or if you're looking to go ahead, or this is if there's anything to do with, I mean, so the answer is that what Prabuddha asked, so that we have thousands of possibilities. It's only a matter of whether we have that need or not. So that is the most important part when we are coming out from the educational background, the academic institution. Whether we have that need to be in a star, or whether we have that whether we have that passion to be something to do in future. So if you look at the most of the things which you have coming from even in Sri Lanka, there are a lot of innovations that are coming from. Even maybe there are some the problems of maybe there are some issues with the, like, let's say, not processors and things, but I think those will be we can forget. I mean, with time there will be a lot of opportunities, and there will be the people will be funded. I'm pretty sure that nowadays we have a lot of funding even for the innovations in the local companies. And when we in time, it will be change where the funding comes from the international brand as well. So that will be the future. It's the most important part is that to have that passion to build something our own, not to wait until we get into a we need to be a doctor, we need to be a lawyer, we need to be an engineer to become someone who to if you want to win, become someone more professional. So that is not the case anymore. I think that is not the case, but being passionate, being up to date with the technology and what's the new trends in the world. So I think that is something we have to achieve in our life when you're coming out from the academic institution, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Chaminda. I guess the key takeaway is that there are no one type of job that will win the game, and same as like we imagine like 10-20 years ago, you have to be this, otherwise your life doesn't have a purpose in a sense. So that time has long passed, and it is long due mentality that we should have got into. Also, now the next question, Shaad, I would like to take your opinion on this, that you mentioned a lot of the tech savvy, or there are like few, let's say, the trust sectors or somewhat on booming. What about the rest? What can the other people can do? Like, let's say from accounting or from physiotherapy, journalism, what are they going to do? What are the chances they have on this disruptive space we have? What can they have? So like we have people who are not in this sort of a segment, say IT related, or the areas that you mentioned. What about them? Do they have hope? What do you think?
So I think a good example that you said is journalists, right? For example, back in the day, you had to be part of a network in order for your ideas to be recognized and shared. But whereas today, that power has shifted from these networks to individual, content creators. So, lots of people now trust podcasts. They trust YouTube channels. They trust, content creators more than they trust some of the, major media outlets, right? And that's because there is the incentives are different. When you're on a platform, your main incentive is to build a community, and that community essentially creates more eyeballs, and that way you can either get ad revenue or you can either monetize through membership or subscriptions, which means that through subscriptions alone, you can monetize your content, and you don't need to be part of a major media network, right? So the problem is these media networks or these legacy companies will be disrupted, but like journalism as a profession will still be there. The difference is that the journalist can do more investigative work, do more stuff without having the need for, or without having the need to toe the company line. I used to work for a media company in Sri Lanka. There was a incident where a major news that broke. The the heads basically told us not to run the news because the news involved one of their biggest sponsors or the biggest advertisers, right? So we can't even say the truth in terms of the news because it involves, funding and stuff like that. Whereas when you have decentralized platforms where people are only, making money through providing great content and value, that's a way that power shifts, and that's where storytellers, content creators, can create or chart their own path. So all of these jobs, whether it's physiotherapy, whether it's art, whether it's journalism, these will all be there. And if you notice as well, like even when you're consuming YouTube viral content, it's usually the content that's well produced, right? These are not using a webcam and your phone to video and create those stuff. You would usually have high production value stuff that will actually get transmitted. The difference is before you will spend a lot of money to create the content, and then you would be dependent on these large networks to show those content, right? Whereas today you can go direct to the consumer. So these professions will be there. The difference is that how you serve your customers will be different. So through technology. So yeah, there's always hope. It's just how can you creatively think of serving your customer using technology. I think that will be the main catalyst. And I think during the COVID period, I think that really accelerated everything, right? I literally at the early days, I heard tuition teachers, school teachers using WhatsApp to teach children at home. These are stuff that no one ever thought, right? Like when we were going to school, like, would anyone actually, even our teachers, would they trust us to do work from home, right? That's not something that would normally happen. But today, lots of creative problem solving happened when the pandemic hit. And I am quite, I'm quite excited to see what additional innovation that will come through because of that.
Right. Okay. Chaminda, I would like to take your opinion on that as well. Like, what say that you are not in IT or the mentioned areas. What can other people do? How can they thrive to their best version of themselves in this sort of a situation?
So I think the like Shaad mentioned, that we now live in the monetized world, right? I mean, so that anything can be anything can have value on your own. So it doesn't mean that it has to be a content, or it has to be a software part of it, or technology or anything. But even for your time, you can charge for something, right? I mean, so that is what do as professionals, the teachers, or the like you mentioned, the physiotherapists or the doctors. So what I mean, they had this. For an example, the physiotherapists or doctors, they had these the clients early days as well, and they will have it in future as well. But the word what you call what word has brought us with the pandemic and with the technology and things like that. So even though that you have even in a small room in your own house, so that you can have clients from anywhere in the world. So that is something that we hardly thought about early days, right? I mean, now the Shaad is not in Sri Lanka, but still being joined with us for the webinar. And I'm working from Sri Lanka, but normally I'm working with the Norwegian team. So that is how the world has been changed, and it be applicable for any of the professions as well. So the doctors early days, if you want to hire someone, if you want to meet a doctor in the India or the anywhere in the world, we might have to buy a ticket and book a ticket from the airline and go in there. Then they booking, staying in a hotel, all these things. But there are a lot of platforms that we can have. We can channel a doctor through the internet nowadays. So it won't be the. You don't have to be be in the technology, but you might have to use the technology. So there are clear the difference between that, what you are doing with the technology, but whether you are inventing the technology or whether you are developing something. But we might have to use the technology. That is obvious, but what you have to remember is that we are living in a monetized world. So like that means everything what we do has a value. I'm not saying that we have to think about the money, but what I'm saying here is that there's a value for what we do. So it doesn't matter whether you are working in the music industry or whether we are using we are creating the values with the video editing or video creation. All of these has a value in the end, so that you can charge for your copyrights. So that's the basically the world is going into. But if you can't covered with the copyrights, you can have your own platform, and whether you can join with the existing platform. And so think about how the what Shaad mentioned about Grabber or the Uber. So the Uber is not a platform or a cab service. It's a drive sharing. So remember the terms. It has a clear difference that in it's not the cab service organization. It's a drive sharing. That means I have a vehicle which I can share with someone else. So that is, if you think about Airbnb, so I have a house and I have a separate couch which I can share, so that I can sell that particular couch in the house. So it's not we are owning a hotel, even though that in Sri Lanka that most of the Airbnb the places are the hotels. It doesn't mean to be. The term or the invention has came because that we have something at home and we can share it. So that platform has been developed. So that is if you look at the Airbnb, the people who has invented that, those are not the software developers, or software developers are the last people who invent something. So being in the industry, being in the product development for like almost 2 decades now. So I know that software developers are the last people who might invent something by their own, because they think they always find out the depth of the thing. They are the people who comes with the crazy ideas. So they will say the first thing if I say that is that, are you crazy? Are you looking for something like this? So if for an example, there's someone comes on me to and think about developing something like Tiqri in the early days, how they have started. They have given out over 1,000 mobile phones and all these devices for free. So who think that it will get success? The first 1,000 devices, they given it totally free for all the tuk-tuks. Who think that there will be someone who can put that money on some trust in that idea. So there are a lot of things in all in. My point is that the whole thing is that the knowledge which you learn, it's past or what is available today. The most important thing is that we need to come with creativity to use that knowledge which you have. Knowledge is something we cannot use for the future. Like Shaad mentioned, that the knowledge is already, it has been there for a couple of years or a couple of decades, but learning that won't help because it's already there, right? But to use that knowledge and come up with something new, it doesn't have to be technology, but it has to be something new. So that is something I mean, we should passionate about, or we have to think about what is the next big thing in the world.
And Prabuddha, if I just may also add a couple of thoughts to what Chaminda was saying. I absolutely agree on the notion that software developers are the last people who actually come up with ideas. I mean, it might not be all the time, but the reason for that is because they're so, left brain thinking. They're so analytical. They're just geared for problem solving, or you just give them a problem, they'll solve it for you, right? You give them a challenge, they'll fix it. They love that, but they're not the best in terms of finding out what problems there are, or even like figuring out, like for example, when you had Steve Jobs and you have Steve Wozniak. The Steve Wozniak was the developer guy. He didn't develop the Macintosh, right? It was Steve Jobs who actually, like, that was his vision. He said, no, it has to be beautiful. It needs to be this way, And he wasn't a technical person. He literally was a calligrapher. He's the one who brought in all these fonts and all this kind of stuff. So absolutely, the two people meeting together, coming together, I think that there's lots of power there. And also the only other thing I wanted to add was, think it doesn't have to be this major problem to solve, right? But think of even local problems, right? Like, what if there was an app that can help let me know what time the bus is arriving, right? A specific bus. Then work backwards, what do I need to make this happen, right? Or right now, obviously, smallholder farmers, these small farmers, they make up 70% of all food supplies in the world. But more than 50% of these smallholder farmers are living under poverty lines. Like literally the food that we eat is coming from smallholder farmers. They basically keep all of us alive, but 50% of those smallholder farmers are living below poverty line. That just does not make any sense, right? That's a big problem. But that is, at least for Sri Lankan, context, it's definitely a problem that we can potentially solve if we can think creatively. How can we bring, not just technology, as Chaminda said, but how do we think creatively to help not just the farmers, but everyone within that value chain, right? Because there's a lot of inefficiency there. I'm sure you can look at any single thing, break it down to first principles, and you will see the inefficiencies everywhere. How do you then make it efficient? And then once you are able to make it efficient and you go to the market will reward you. So keep your eyes peeled. Those, inspiration will come. And once you see that, then just pounce on it and go after it.
Yeah, I think I would like to connect again back to your presentation where you were saying go on the notions of Kaizen, where you find continuous improvements. And the fact that what we need here is not that we need to rethink the way we do things, and there are always space available for improvement. So put your creative nerves into action, think it through, where the, how you also mentioned, find that gap, exploit that gap where you can add value, and then create. So creativity holds a big place here, because if you look at all these technologies doing the basics, the repetitive stuff that we've been doing every day now and then, every day, that has been actually replaced by this artificial intelligence, maybe machine learning or somewhat. But the thinking part is not actually cannot be done by the technology. It's always they have to have the previous data there to predict the future, but that out of the norm consciousness level is not with machines. Maybe there are some cases where actually the MIT robotics they actually saw some face impressions that which they did not program, it came out of the robots they developed, or some of the Google AI interfaces actually developed, like it itself is actually evolving in the process of doing it. So that can be happy that maybe that we leave it that for the philosophical session when we do it in the near future. But I think that's where the line is, that you need to reinvent. There's always there's a way to do it better, and find that point that that makes things better. And it doesn't matter where it is. Technology, you have to use it. You have to use it. That's a basic skill. It's going to be one of those basic fundamental things that you have to have it. But that part, that the value that you're going to add is up to you. So in any sector, there's space for improvement. That's the bottom line, I would say, after all this. I think we are running out of time, so I would like to break it down to last 2 questions. Let's go from there. I would like to go for a Sri Lankan context of things. I would like to take both of your opinions on this. Let's start with Chaminda. Chaminda, yeah. So see, all these technologies are there, that there are global norms happening, there are dynamics happening outside of world, that the world is rolling. But what are, in terms of you are in a position that you actually exposed to local context as well as international level, and then you also you find these talents joining with you in Sri Lanka specifically. When you do that, what are the things that you think that the local talent has to improve, or what are they lacking that we need to put more attention to in terms of bringing it up to speed with the global norms? What are those things? Maybe if you tell a few of them and share your idea on that, actually the participants or the audience can get a better understanding on where they specifically need to have some improvements.
Right. So when it comes to the what you call employment, or if you want to hire someone, let's say that we start with that context. I think if you talk to 5 entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka, or a businessman, or a organization owners in Sri Lanka, what is the burning issue at the moment? I think if you ask that question from 10 out of 10, might be 8 or 9 people would say that hiring correct people, or the employment, I mean, getting the professionals are the issue. I think the most of the cases that there was a saying, I can't remember the exact word, but Steve Jobs has said that your work is going to fill large part of your life. Remember that. So that I think that how passionate you are, because if you're not passionate, if you think about the couple of things, okay, I want to be a doctor just because of some of the things other than the passion, not because that I want to touch a patient or doing surgeries, all these things, without having that passion in our life. Starting a career just because of anything else, or because of the status, because of the money, because of the things, other things that, okay, it's not for the doctors, it can be the engineer, or it can be a teacher, or anyone. Without a passion, the problem is that in the first few interviews that we are in the software industry, at least when I'm doing interviews, so that we first thing we look for the passion, whether that people will be passionate enough to do the things. Otherwise, that what will happen is in with the time, they'll get boring. The things will get boring. I mean, every day you have to deal with the challenges. So that is not on the IT industry. That will be the case for almost all the industry today. Even if you are looking for a business management, or if you are looking for the managing people, You have to be passionate enough, or you have to be the creative enough to deal with all these the problems we are coming in. I mean, like I said, the knowledge we have learned, or the knowledge or the studies we have done in the academic background, we cannot use it to solve the problems which is arrived today or tomorrow, because it's long gone now. So we might have to rethink how we should. So that is where the passion should come, and how much effort, or how much the creativity we can put on the things we're going to do. So that is something we have to remember. So your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And in the same quote, he has said that if you're not satisfied what you do, so look for something you're satisfied and keep looking. So that is what he has mentioned in so that don't settle. So keep looking for what you're passionate about, or what you believe that it will be satisfied in your life. So that is something we have to remember. The first thing I see that somewhat we are lacking when it comes to the looking for new people. I think it's for the not only for the software or IT industry, it will be the same case for all other industry as well. So that is something we remember, and it will be the same applied the previous conversation. That is, we are in the exam based culture in Sri Lanka. So we study for exams, not for the what you call we don't learn things because that we have a we don't need that we don't have that need learning something new. That is not in our culture. So at least what I have gone through and what I have seen at the moment as well. So we always look for, I mean, we study for exams, and we try to achieve something within the exam, and then go for something. By doing that, I'm getting this. It's not the case. I'm not putting any blame on it. It's nothing like that. But that is something I have seen as an issue in Sri Lanka. So with the culture and with the parents and with the teachers, with all these the people who are involved in academic institutions, with the family and all these influence which is coming through, which makes us a part of exams. Not about I think the both of you have been out of the maybe out of the country for a while. Maybe we have been different with the different cultures, Prabuddha and the Shaad, both of them. So you might have seen that with others in other cultural backgrounds. So they haven't studied for just because just sake of exams. So that we have seen that passion in them. When it comes to it's if you go for the part-time job in the restaurant to do the dishes, they have that passion, right? I mean, we have seen that. So that is something I have seen we are missing in Sri Lanka. So which we can put some effort on, and maybe with time I can add a lot. Maybe we can go for Shaad, and then maybe I can join again. I like to hear from Shaad as well.
Yeah, Shaad, I think the key takeaway is like do what you love and never settle. Never settling is where the growth is. That chaos should be there, that erupting chaos that should take you on the growth. So yes, Shaad, maybe please share your view on that as well. I mean, what can maybe share your experience as a whole, and then what are we lacking and what should we do about it?
So I think a couple of things is, like I said, I guess, have a plan where, and again, when I say have a plan, just try and imagine what your future life should look like, and what do you want that future life to actually look like? Does that include a house? Does that include owning a nice car, getting married, having children? Once you have all that designed, and no harm in dreaming, right? So think about what that life looks like. Maybe you want to travel on holiday twice or thrice a year. Next step, I guess, is you'll have to figure out how much is all that going to cost in the future, right? And then start working backwards to say, okay, I have big dreams. I want to have a nice life. I want to send my kids to good schools. I want to own, really nice things. Have a place of my own. Then work out, okay, how much does my dream cost, right? So once you have that idea, you can then start to create, I guess, realistic plans for yourself in terms of, okay, what do I need to do? Now, when you're starting off in your 20s, you have a huge advantage, and that is time, right? And something that no one really taught me, which now I've sort of learned because, so I sort of stumbled upon it, but there's a huge amount of value in compound interest. That's a concept that I actually didn't learn about until very recently. But compound interest means that, the little bit that you do, even at a very young age, over time, it grows exponentially, right? So somebody at, in their 20s, if they put in like $100 or, $1,000 a month, versus somebody at the age of 40 thinking about investing or adding, putting money aside, they'll need to put a lot more money at a later age than somebody at their 20s. So when you're in your 20s, when you don't have a lot of responsibilities, especially with family or, obviously you might have responsibilities of your parents or your siblings, but you probably wouldn't have responsibilities of having to pay, rent for your own home, or, you not have to own a car or, pay a mortgage or that kind of thing. So your responsibilities are relatively low in your 20s. So, and risk is also probably low in your 20s. So try as much as possible to do different things and find what works for you. When I, straight out of school, I kind of did a lot of things. Like straight after O-levels, like I was 6-8 months, I was not doing anything because you're waiting for results. I joined an events company. I was doing events. I was doing children's, parties, DJing, that kind of stuff. Then after university, I joined, like I said, a media company. I don't want to name the station. It was a radio station. I dabbled in that. Then, joined some corporate environments. All of this crazy stuff I did, in my early 20s. And because of that, I kind of stumbled into digital kind of accidentally. So what I can say based on my experience is, because when I started, I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. Nobody gave me like a blueprint. No one taught me about monetary policy, M1. No one really gave me any of this sort of, guidance at that stage. And I'm sure for Chaminda and Prabuddha, for yourself also, like we had no clue, right, about these things. And we were in school and coming out of uni. But because when we came out, when I went to the UK at the time, I actually went to the UK in one of the worst times I could ever go. Actually, in Sri Lanka, the situation was much better because we had just finished, we've just come out of the war. Straight after that, that's when I actually left Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka was actually in a high. It was economically doing really well, lots of growth, all that kind of thing was happening. But I went into an environment where there was no jobs, there was no nothing. There was literally, I was working in the cinema, I was working in fast food, joints, where my manager was a master's degree holder, right? And the guy who was serving the burgers and making the patties is also a degree holder, right? We were in one of the worst economic situations in the West at the time. So for us, I guess the environment was not in the state where we are like, oh, okay, anything is possible. It was more along the lines of, what can I do to pay my rent? What can I do to make sure that I can, make sure that there's food on the table? Like that was the situation that we were in. But it was because we were doing things slightly, futuristic. Because I had two jobs job offers that I had. One was a job where I would get into project management, but I would be project managing the London Tube and sending out mystery shoppers to the Tube to check the quality and service quality and all of that. And I was going to be paid a decent amount of money for that. The other option was to work in a digital marketing agency, but the salary is really bad. But I get to work in, digital marketing. And at the time I was thinking of the two, I would probably do the second option of joining a digital marketing agency. I will learn a lot of things, even though the pay is not great. Now, because the pay is not great, I still have to pay my rent. I still have to, pay my bills. So I actually did two jobs. I was, so from 8:30 to 5, I'll be working at the agency, and then I take a bus, travel to the city center, and go to the cinema where I was working. Sometimes I will do closes, which means I have to stay till 12:30 because after everybody has watched the shows, or sometimes at 10:30. I would work even weekends. So I literally used to work, like, even now that I'm thinking about it, I can't even imagine I did this stuff, right? I used to do like 100 hours, 110 hours. And this is not unique. You ask anyone who has gone abroad, especially during studies and stuff, these are the stories that no one will actually share, right? When I used to come back home, I used to always, my uncles, friends, they'll be like, bring me a phone now when you come. You have to bring, sweets or chocolates and shoes. And I'm thinking that I don't even own the most fanciest phone. I don't even own the fanciest shoes, but I'm bringing the fancy shoes and fancy stuff for my family and my friends, the neighbors, because that's what's expected. But life is tough, in Australia, in the US and stuff like that. You would really, the song Ulat Tekai, Malak Tekai, like you can literally, like Madakala Metantai, you can literally say that's how you build character, and that exposure is what really hardens and toughens and strengthens you, and you see the world for what it is. And that toughness, you don't have to experience that to, I wouldn't expect my kids to experience that. Right? I would not, and that's not what I'm expecting anybody. But the long-winded way of me saying this is try and avoid all of that, because honestly, if I could have done it differently, I definitely would have. But it doesn't mean that you need to have a well laid out plan, or you need to know what exactly you should be doing. There are some people like us, who had no clue what to do. And somehow it all kind of worked out really well, right? So just trust your gut, take decisions that have long-term benefit than the short-term, because I could have taken the project management role, but the problem is there's so many project managers, right? There's no real value. I mean, not to denigrate PMs, because we need them to deliver projects, but I feel that if I took that job, in hindsight, 10 years, 15 years now, my life would have been different, and it wouldn't have been, where I am today. So, so have trust in your decisions. Think long term, and I think there'll be lots of value that you can create by thinking long term and not thinking short term. And as Chaminda said, don't think about the cash alone. Cash is important. Money solves problems for sure, but think about making wealth or growing wealth for the long term, not for the short term. Because if you're thinking about short termism, then you might win the battle but lose the war. You want to win the war, So you want to make sure that you're thinking long term. Have a plan, but it doesn't mean that plan can't change based on newer things and newer data that you get. So be flexible, be open-minded, and know that there is no one way to do a certain thing. There's always multiple different ways, but you will always at the end, find success and success will meet you at some point.
Yeah, thanks, Shaad. I think it's quite inspirational in that sense. And then thanks for sharing your personal exposure. I think it is what it is that that actually makes up your who you are today. That actually is the robustness and the integrity you have as a person. So I think when you say you've done 110, 100 hours, I share the same story. It's that we have to work to earn, and then there goes it for the university fee, and then you start from zero, and then you do that for 4 years, and then you're like, anything doesn't kill you, make you stronger, right? So at the end of the day, you're like, okay, and there are sacrifices, and that is what actually that counts a lot. I am glad that I had exposure, and then I am thankful for that history. And everyone has story. Everyone is unique in their sense. And so you mentioned to dream big, and we are not too small at any level. We as we are in Sri Lanka, we have nothing short to do to make the big thing. So dream big. The first thing, if you want to make a dream come true, is you got to wake up. Once you wake up, I think today's forum has given enough points to think about, reevaluate your situation, and move forward. And we cordially invite all of you to find your better self, and then start seeing the magic of the daily routine. It doesn't really matter. It may be that, as Shaad mentioned, that short compounded interest will actually count towards who you a better person of yours. So we wish you all the best, and we are so much in trust that you will achieve that. You got to shine. If you want to shine like the sun, you got to burn like it first. I think this is the stage that we can do. Actually, Hitler said that. I am like everyone. We got to learn from everyone. I think we covered a lot of teamwork, collaboration, working together, having open mind, no limitations, and you have your final destination, but you should be able to adapt yourself or find your way through, like the water, as Bruce Lee says. And so there are so many resources available for us to find that, make it happen. So I think with that, unfortunately, as much as it is a wonderful conversation to keep on going, time permits as much as it is us today with us. So with that note, I would like to start concluding this session. And so first of all, Shaad Hamid, I can thank you enough on getting on board with us today, and it is a pleasure having you. Your exposure in both as a Sri Lankan, as a fellow Isipathanian, and as well in the country as well as in the global level, your experience and exposure, I'm sure that brought us a lot of good ideas, and share your experience. Thank for sharing with us in this forum, and we are quite glad that you came on board. Of course, Chaminda Sooriyapperuma, thank you very much for joining on the forum as a panelist. And it's a lot of your experience. I think it goes a long way for young professionals, including everyone. It's unique set of experience. There's something to learn. So so on behalf of Isipathana College Junior All Boys Union, I would like to thank both of you for coming on board in this lovely session. So and also we would like to thank all the participants today for joining with us with this webinar, this episode of the webinar series. And also from a technical support perspective, I would like to thank Gasnafer Jalaldin, who's doing all the technical stuff from the back and supporting us to have a smooth event ongoing. So we hope we will we will see you one day in the next month session as well. This is an ongoing session. We would like to discuss current and relevant topics that would help you to progress in your life. So with that note, we'll conclude this session. Thank you very much. Stay in touch with the Junior All Boys Union Facebook page, and also this session will be uploaded in the Junior All Boys Isipathana College Junior All Boys Union YouTube channel. So we would like to share this knowledge, share the experience, and then keep the ideas coming and find your way to success and be a better person, or be the best person, be the best version of yourself to make the world a better place. So thank you very much. We wish you all great success in your future endeavors, and have a good night. Thank you very much.